Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar today. We will talk about the Spooky2 Scalar. And I will start my presentation and share my screen. This is the point where I ask if you can see the first slide of my presentation, and if you can, please write yes in the webinar chat. Yes, okay, excellent. Thank you. We'll get started. And from now until I finish my presentation, I will not answer any raised hands, so please don't raise hands unless there's an issue, a technical issue, if you can't see or things like that. But if you can see my presentation, please don't raise your hands and ask your questions in the question and answer window. Now we're going to get started. My name is Liviu Stanisor, and today we will talk, as I said, about the Spooky2 Scalar. Was widely announced. The table of contents for this presentation is the following. I will start with an introduction. I will tell you a few words about myself. Then we'll briefly go through the history and generation of the scalar energy. Then we will see how to set up and tune the scalar device. Then we will go through the three scalar modes: pure scalar, molecular scalar, and rife. Then we'll introduce the scalar harmony. And then we will see what it means to imprint with scalar. Then we'll go through the biofeedback scan and the grade scan. And then I'll share some of my personal experience with the scalar. And finally, although it's not in this table of contents, after I finish this presentation, I will go through the questions and answers, and I think that's the most important part. A few words about myself. I was born and raised in Romania, where I graduated from medical school. After that, I followed research in cognitive neuroscience in Amsterdam and the Netherlands, where I also successfully defended my PhD thesis. Following that, I specialized in nuclear medicine. I am currently based in the UK, and I'm registered as a medical doctor in the Netherlands, Romania, and the UK. Apart from that, I took an interest in alternative medicine, and I got qualifications in crystal therapy, in Reiki, and angel therapy, and combinations of these, Crystal Reiki, and a couple of more actually. Also in energy medicine, sound medicine, frequency therapy, and bioresonance. I was introduced to Spooky2 in January 2023, and I have used it intensively ever since. Currently, I'm using it complementary with bioresonance. And an important point, which also serves as a disclaimer, today I'm here as an alternative medicine practitioner. What I'm trying to say is that this will not be medical advice as it is understood by mainstream medicine. I will try and explain and help with the knowledge that I have as an alternative medicine practitioner. Let's go through the history of scalar energy, and it starts with James Clerk Maxwell, who was a Scottish physicist, and he wrote equations describing electromagnetic waves. This is the modern start of what we know about electromagnetism. A contemporary of his is Heinrich Rudolf Hertz, who was a German physicist, and he proved by experiments in 1888 the existence of electromagnetic waves, which was predicted by Maxwell. And then we move on to Nikola Tesla, who you're probably familiar with a little bit. Born in modern-day Croatia, he was a famous inventor, and he measured scalar waves, and he filed a patent for wireless transmission of energy using scalar waves in the year 1900. And last but not least is Albert Einstein, the famous German physicist, who wrote equations describing a scalar field in relation with gravitational waves. Now remember, this was before the 1950s or in the 1950s. But more recently, Dr. Konstantin Mail has studied and written about the scalar waves extensively, and he uses the vortex theory of electric fields to explain this. Well, what are the scalar waves? And there is even debate on the fact if we can still call them scalar waves. But I will try and explain the difference between transverse and longitudinal waves. As early as the year 1900, when Nikola Tesla filed his patent on the wireless transmission of electricity, he noticed the existence of a longitudinal wave, which was propagating faster than the speed of light. Dr. Konstantin Mail further described these waves. They carry out lossless transmission of energy. That means that they transmit energy without losing any part of it. They can carry information and are not attenuated by solids, including the Faraday cage. And these waves have been named scalar waves. And you can see this diagram about the transverse waves or transversal waves and longitudinal waves. The electromagnetic waves, as we use them today for radio and other applications, are transversal or transversal waves. And you can see how they are propagating in the upper diagram. You imagine you have a string and you will start to wiggle it up and down. And in doing this, you will generate a movement which is perpendicular to the oscillation direction. And this is the transverse waves. The longitudinal waves, on the other hand, they propagate in the same direction as the direction of propagation, or they oscillate in the same. So this would correspond to trying to pull this elastic string and then leaving it to oscillate between the fixed 2 points. And that would be the longitudinal wave. And this is the difference between the electromagnetic waves and what we call the scalar waves, or some people call the scalar waves. How is the scalar energy generated? You can also call it, some people call it scalar field, some people call it scalar potential. This is the diagram of the experimental setup created by Dr. Mail. And you see that these correspond with the nomination of the scalar boxes. One is called transmitter, the other one is called receiver. The important thing is that these two, the transmitter and receiver, are connected with a wire. Here is called earth connection between brackets, or between so-called earth connection, because it's not connected to the earth actually. Now the transmitter has a high frequency generator that generates electricity, and is also connected with LEDs, so you can see a light coming up, and that's what you see Interestingly, it also has a Faraday cage, but we're not going to get into a lot of details. But the idea is that these two ball electrodes will generate electromagnetism, and the two wave fronts will collide. And that's how the scalar energy is created. And to have an idea on how that happens, there's an experiment which people have imagined, which are called actually vortex rings, and this is fluid dynamics, but it looks a little bit similar with the mechanism of generation of the scalar. So let's have a quick look on how that would look like.
I think today might be the day. The second day. Look at those hands. Wow. I started this process simply wanting to recreate something that captured my imagination, but obviously it morphed into something much larger than that. It wasn't about fluid dynamics or motion control. It was.
Okay, it looks very interesting, I think. And it gives an idea. Of course, it's not the same thing. These are two fluids in different colors, and not electromagnetic waves, but I think they are a bit similar. Helps us to imagine what's happening. Now, how does the scalar field look like? The geometry is that of a rugby ball or American football, and the largest width is halfway distance in between boxes, and the size of the largest width is half of the distance in between the boxes. So that's roughly how it is, what it should look like. Now, a quick description of the scalar. Many of you hopefully already have it, and if not, you're probably thinking of getting one. It's the two boxes, the transmitter and the receiver. The transmitter has a small screen, which when you switch it on, a number comes up. And that is the frequency of oscillation of the high frequency oscillator that we've seen in the diagram. And it has obviously an on-off switch, and that's a tuning button here. And then the cables that are used for the different connections. The link cable is one of them. You might be able to see here written link. There's a banana cable going from this to the receiver, the corresponding plug there. And the receiver is simpler. It only has one button, and that one you use to test if the scalar field is established. It's not always on, actually. It should be off usually. You only use it to test the field, and then you depress it again and you switch it off. A few words about the scalar setup and tuning. How do you set it up? Now you put the two boxes and you connect them with a link cable. Then you connect it to the power outlet. and you have it set up, but you need to keep the field geometry in mind because you want to do something in the scalar field. And therefore you need to have a minimum distance in between the boxes. You need to have at least 6 feet. That's about 1.8 meters in between the boxes. So this is the minimum. It can be longer. And if it's very long, then you need to use a link cable extension or a longer link cable. Some people even set it up to include the whole house. But the best is to allow 30 centimeter between the receiver and the feet and between the transmitter and the head. And this is I'm opening a parenthesis here because from my experience, I've noticed that it's best to have your head towards the transmitter and the feet towards the receiver. And I think lying down is better than sitting up in the field so that the cable is all around you. And that's why you need to have a longer distance from the transmitter. If you respect these 30 centimeter and then 60 centimeter, and there's an omission there. It's 2 feet between the transmitter and the head, so that's 60 centimeter between the head and the transmitter. And if you keep these distances, then you'll have more than 1.8 meter in between the boxes. It's 2 meters or more. And this is for individual use. If you set up the scalar for a very large room, for instance, when I went to the Spooky2 conference in London, they set up the scalar for the whole conference venue. Very large room indeed. And then I think it doesn't matter how you're oriented inside the field. I enjoyed the benefits of scalar energy. I've been having chronic fatigue issues, and at the time I was expecting to leave very early. Instead, I was feeling very energetic and I stayed until late with no issues at all. So that was definitely with the help of scalar energy. A few words about tuning. You switch on the transmitter. Then you turn the small knob counterclockwise until the LED light shows maximum intensity. And this is the first peak. This is how the instructions go for this device. Now, also interestingly, a point that I wanted to make is that Dr. Miles' documentation on the scalar waves experiments in 2000 states that the lowest transmitter light corresponds with the maximum scalar energy transfer. So that's the energy transfer. Now I want to explain this graph for a minute. When you switch on the scalar, the transmitter, then you see a number on that screen, which is 8. 8 is 8 megahertz. The frequency is measured in megahertz. As you turn the knob counterclockwise, the frequency goes lower. And as you do so, the light that you see there, the red light, gets brighter. At some point, you will reach what is called a scalar tuning point. This is where the light is at the maximum. You should stop there. Don't go, because if you go further, if you keep turning, it will go low, lower, and then it goes up again. And it will reach a second maximum, which is the EMF tuning point. Do not use this one. If you use it here, you won't get good effects for yourself or for whoever is in the field. So please stop at the first point where the light reaches maximum. That's the scalar tuning point. There are 3 scalar modes. One is pure scalar, which is quite easy. You switch on the device and tune it and sit or lie in the field. It will feel soothing and healing for some people. Some people don't feel anything, but you enjoy the benefits. The pure scalar field is reported to bring many health benefits, as the DNA of the cells uses scalar waves for communication. This is demonstrated, by the way. There's published research on this. The second way you can use the scalar is the molecular scalar. And you do this by placing the substance that you want incorporated in the field on the receiver, on the receiver coil. And then the third way of using it is the Rife or frequency scalar. After you tune the scalar, you can run programs as you desire. And an important point is that because the scalar field is not Hertzian, as the electromagnetic energy is, you cannot apply a frequency directly to it. And the way to apply the frequencies to the scalar is to use modulation, which is equivalent to switching the device on and off. And therefore, this is an important point. The most time-efficient way to use the scalar are the first two modalities. I'm not sure if you understand this, so I'm going to explain. If you use the pure or the molecular scalar, you will use the frequency of oscillation of the scalar device, which is the tuning frequency around 5. For me, it's usually between 5 and 6 megahertz, the one that I find when I tune my scalar. Now, if you apply frequencies to it, you will partly switch off the scalar. If you apply a frequency of 100 hertz, you will get 100 hertz from the scalar. So that means that the field will be switched off for the rest of the period. It will flicker 100 times in a second. Now, compared to the native frequency, if you like, of the scalar, which is megahertz, that's thousands of times more. And so you will get more of the field in a second or per time unit if you do that. So there's a trade-off on this. You can apply a certain frequency, however, you will get less of the field's density, if you like, in half an hour or an hour, the time that you spend in the scalar field. And there is a tutorial on how to connect the hardware. There's a tutorial on how to set up and tune the scalar. You can find them on YouTube. A few words on how to use the scalar harmony. Harmony is an add-on that fits on the receiver, as you can see in this picture. It enables us to incorporate the frequencies of sound and music in the scalar field. After fitting it, you can connect it with a cable to a music source, such as your smartphone or an MP3 player. And you should mind the fact that the sound is not loud at all. Sometimes you can't even hear it. I do sometimes use relaxing music tracks, which I found on the internet, and they have a 40 hertz sound in the background. But usually, to be honest, I prefer to use the molecular scalar. I place a cluster of amethyst crystal on the receiver. You can see here that the harmony also has a space where you can place an essential oil, a bottle of essential oil, if you want to incorporate it in the scalar field. And that's how you use the molecular scalar, by the way. One of the uses. You can put a small crystal on it, or you can take the harmony off and put a bigger crystal on it, or something bigger that you want to incorporate. And then you will get it through the scalar. It will be part of the field. Let's go through a few software aspects, because some of you are only just starting. and there you might be struggling a little bit with how to run a program for your scalar. There are two ways of running programs. One way is to use a dedicated preset. And as an example, I've chosen the Spooky Scalar Healing. And then another way is to use a shell empty preset. And I loaded a program for headache. Of course, you need to install your Spooky2 software first. And this is how it looks like after you install the software and install the drivers the first time you use it. When you launch the software, it will look like this, and this is the advanced view. If you don't know the difference between the basic view and advanced view, I recommend you search for and watch a tutorial or a webinar on the Spooky2 software. I also have a webinar that I've held about the Spooky2 software. But here I have a recording of how to load and run a program. And this is using a dedicated preset. I'm hoping you can all see what's written there. It may be quite small. You go to the presets tab, you click on heal, then you go to the scalar folder, then you select Spooky2 Scalar Healing. And then in programs, the programs are already loaded. You don't need to load anything new. Then you go to the control tab, you overwrite your generator, you click on the button of your generator. And when you're ready, you click the start button. And these frequencies will run. It takes a bit of time to load the waveforms on the generator, but then it starts. Now this is how to use a dedicated preset. The other way to run it is to load, to go to an empty preset, how to load an empty preset and load a program of your choice. And this is all for the frequency or Rife scalar mode, right? Let's keep that in mind. Now you go at the same preset tab, then you click on Shell Empty Presets folder, then you select the scalar folder, and then you select, I usually use the Spooky Scalar General preset, then you go to Programs, you type what you want to look for instance, headache in the Programs tab. It lists all the programs for headaches, and then you look through and choose the programs that you find appropriate. And I chose a program of 81 minutes. If you double click it or click on the plus, it will load and it shows in the lower tab. Then you go to Control, click Override Generator, click the button of the generator that you want to run on, and then click on Start. And then you see the same process, quickly loading the waveforms, and then the program starts. You can see the estimated total runtime is 1 hour and 21 minutes. So you know how long it's going to take. Okay, that is how to run frequencies on the scale. Now, there is also an aspect that I wanted to talk about. There is a direct mode and a remote mode that you can use your scalar with. The direct mode is to have the person or the persons inside of the scalar. Now, the remote mode works by placing the DNA, that means nail clippings, of the person you wish to treat on the transmitter coil inside the field. You can see here in the picture that there's a small circle, and there's a sticker. Inside the sticker are nail clippings. This is the same way that we use DNA for the remote, the Spooky2 remote. Instead of that, we can place them here on the transmitter coil. You can also put it inside the field in between the boxes, but I prefer to use it like this. I also tried with the picture of the person in the field, and I connected the picture and the person using Reiki. For me, it worked the same way, based on the testimony of the persons that I used. How can you imprint with the scalar? You can imprint a lot of things, actually. You can imprint water, you can imprint stickers and holographic bracelets, and you can imprint even crystals with the scalar. And how do you do that? You place the object either in between the boxes, but better on the transmitter coil. I always, when I imprint, I place it on the transmitter coil. Up to an hour of running time is sufficient for the pure scalar, or one frequency that you want to imprint. Some people say that it can be also faster than that. When you use a larger set of frequencies, you can run it for longer. And again, this is a matter of taste. Some people do it with a remote with a very short dwell time, and then within an hour you can imprint hundreds of frequencies. The scalar can be used in the same way. I imprint a lot of water. Actually, I place a carafe of water. Please try and avoid metal and plastic when you work with the scalar and you want to imprint it. So I use glass containers, and I place the water on the transmitter. I leave it for at least an hour, usually longer than an hour. And then our family of three drinks the water. We drink a lot of water from the scalar, as in imprinted with a pure scalar field. A few words about the biofeedback scan. The biofeedback scan is a useful tool to find the pathogens that are evoking the strongest response in your body. Now, a word of caution: not all microorganisms are pathogenic. There's actually less than 50% of the bacteria in the body that have been proved to be pathogenic. And that's why I'm usually not using the biofeedback scan. I only use it when there are obvious symptoms of an infection, for instance, a cold, flu, diarrhea, sore throat, and fever. I mean, obvious issues and very acute issues. Otherwise, I tend to not use it. Anyway, the biofeedback scan uses scalar digitizer, which you can see in this picture. And therefore, it shortens the scan time to approximately 17 minutes, even when you're refining the frequencies. And the baseline scan is not necessary. These are a few technical details for those that are familiar with the biofeedback scan. Now, it is my preferred method for biofeedback scans and program grade scans because it includes the whole body and it takes the shortest time. I got very good effects for a family member who became symptom-free in only 2 hours after running the frequencies that I found for the biofeedback scan. There is a step-by-step tutorial on YouTube. I also added the link there. That's why I'm not going to describe all the steps there. It's good to have a dedicated video for this, which we do have. And a few things from my personal experience with a scalar. The scalar was the first Spooky2 device that I bought and is still my favorite. I am a Reiki master, and as such I can feel both human and crystal energy. To my pleasant surprise, I could feel the scalar energy from the first use. It feels for me different than either human or crystal energy, and it does feel soothing and calming. It also feels energizing, as a pleasant cooling sensation sometimes around my head and body. And that's why I have extra validation that it's there and it works. Mind you, many people don't feel the scalar at all, but they do feel the effects, or they do enjoy the effects. I have used it as pure energy, molecular mode, as well as with many different programs. And sometimes I do remote sessions when I use Reiki symbols to link the person with their DNA sample or picture. And I feel that Reiki, crystals, and scalar are complementary modalities. And a good point that I also use colloidal silver in conjunction with the scalar. And if you don't know what colloidal silver is, then please look up my webinar on the colloidal silver. I've given it more than once. And I strongly believe in its beneficial properties. I use it every day together with my family. And last but not least, as any of the Spooky2 devices, these are devices. These devices work with energy. And so treat them as such, treat them as energy therapy. And so when you do work with the Spooky before you start the session, the person who wants to benefit from the energy should connect with the energy. You can affirm, I receive this energy for my best health and my highest good. And imagine that the energy that you receive with the Spooky is helping you for your highest good and for your best health. And if you do that, and if you work with a device, then it will do a much better job than if you don't. This was my presentation. Thank you very much for paying attention. You have my email here if you have any questions about this webinar or any other questions at all. I'm also reachable through the Facebook Messenger, and I'm active in the Spooky2 Facebook groups. What I'm trying to say is that if you can reach me, it's quite easy to reach me. And now we can proceed to the questions and answers section. I see a lot of thanks. Thank you also for attending. And now let's try and go through the questions. Question from Annette Popular. Some Spooky2 videos or scalar show a coil to be used for tuning. Put it next to the coil. Okay. I haven't used that coil because it's a long question. I'm not going to read it all. No, I don't use any coil. I just use the tuning as is described. If you're unsure, you can use the button on the receiver. There's a button on the receiver with which you can test if the scalar field is present. After you tune it with a small knob, when you think you've got the maximum light, then you can go and press it, and it should light up the button on the receiver. Yeah, if you see the light, then it's there. Make sure you depress it after that, because if you leave it on, it will drain power from the scalar field generation. So that's how I work with it, and that's how the Spooky2 team recommends this as well. Question from Muriel Fierstein. My transmitter and receiver are standing on the side of a double bed. Okay, both 50 centimeters from the sides. Is your setup have it at head and feet? Yeah, I think it's better. You know, I've played around a little bit with the scalar. I even sat and meditated in the scalar field in the sitting position in between the boxes. I have to say that I didn't have the best experience with the scalar field. I think the best setup for one person is to lie down in the scalar field with the transmitter towards the head and receiver towards the feet. I've also explained this during my presentation. We have the scalar unit across both sides of our bed. I suspect the scalar field goes through our upper body from head to about knee, the bottom rib. Is this sufficient, or is it better to go head to toe? I would recommend head to toe always. If that's not possible, because for instance in my bedroom that's not possible, there's not a rough room, then try it sideways and see how you feel. For me, it didn't feel that great, but it can be different for different people. So try it out. And if you feel that you're benefiting from it, then please go ahead and do it. There are many people who do that. Okay, question from Marilyn Devonish. On the tuning diagram, the EMF point was first, on the graph scalar was second. What I heard was stop at the first, yes. Well, yes, that's true. Let's have a quick look on the diagram. It's the first when you tune, because you go from the higher value down. It's not from the lower up. We tend to read graphs from left to right, but when you switch on the scalar, it will show 8. That's 8 megahertz. It's the highest frequency. And when you turn the knob counterclockwise, it goes down in frequency. Yeah, so I hope that clarifies it. The scalar tuning point is the first one, which is the highest frequency. Okay, question from Michael Goss. Oh, hi, Michael. When I tune my scalar, the light gets brighter and then doesn't get any brighter while I keep lowering the frequency. It hits maximum brightness about 6.2 megahertz and doesn't start getting dimmer until about 5.5. Okay. And the LED reaches its maximum brightness at 6. Yeah, when I check the link light, it is not on. The link light does not come on until about 5.8. The lower the frequency on the transmitter, the brighter the link. Okay. Clarify the thing of the transmitter when considering the LED light versus link light. I've noticed this myself, but not as a wider range of frequency as you've noticed, Michael. And this I tend a little bit to keep in mind what I read in the documentation of Dr. Konstantin Mayo, who was saying that the lower frequency had this stronger transmission. And so if you feel that you want to go lower, you can go a bit lower. You're saying it's between 5.2 and 6.2 and 5.5. You can go and decide for a value in between these two numbers. Let's see, the link light does not come on until 5.8. I mean, if that doesn't come on at all until 5.8, and you can choose a number between 5.5 and 5.8 megahertz. Usually I choose a value between 5 and 6 megahertz. So that fits a little bit with what you're saying. Okay, I hope that helps, Michael. Question from Cynthia Gibson. Can you give an example of when you would want scalar pure and scalar right frequency? Oh, I like pure scalar. I use it Not as often as I'd like, but I do use it a lot. And when do you want rife? When do you want frequency? When you have specific things in mind, you would want frequency. For general vitality and well-being, you can use the pure. I place crystals. I like crystals a lot. I have a cluster right here right now, so I use them a lot, including all the scalar. I place it such a cluster on the scalar at all times, actually. And then again, I mean, when you're doing a scan, a biofeedback scan or a gray program scan, you don't want anything on the receiver, so you remove everything from the receiver. You can't use the molecular. Okay. Question from anonymous attendee. I have my scalar boxes at the head of my bed on my nightstand. Am I correct in assuming that I am not treating the bottom half of my body? I have a small titanium coil in my head to treat an aneurysm. I have been using it for several years off and on. Should that be a problem? I'm not sure what you mean by a titanium coil. If you run electricity through it and it generates an electromagnetic field, then I wouldn't use it when you want to use the scale. So either the scalar or that. Now the other question is a bit more of a discussion with it. What is sure, and I mean, obviously quite tested, is that you have the scalar in between the boxes with the geometry that it's described. And so you will have your upper half of the body within the scalar field. Now, it is also said that the scalar field changes shape according to what's inside it, and it may well be so. But I've had a different experience, at least at some point, when I was saying that I was meditating in the scalar field. I was sitting, and so the scalar field would go up to my chest, but not in my head. And I did feel a difference between the head and the body, which I didn't like. And so I'm trying to avoid that. Unless you can make the setup larger with more distance in between the boxes, and then the field will get larger and it will cover everything, no matter if you're sitting or standing or lying, then that's fine. But if it doesn't, if it's a smaller field, but yeah, then I'm not sure. Question from John Mitten. Our frequency only goes down to 1 megahertz. How do we get 520? You can't get 528 hertz with the pure scalar. That's why you need to apply frequencies to it. And for that, you need to use the software and the generator. Okay. Question from Maryland Devonish. When charging crystal stickers water, how long does the effect last? Oh, it lasts for at least a few days. Some people say even a few weeks. So it lasts long enough. For the water, it lasts more than enough time for you to use it. For the stickers, I think it's pretty much the same with the remote. I think people say a couple of weeks. I haven't played around with stickers a lot, so I can't testify for that. Question from Ricardo Galinato. How to become a Reiki master? How does Reiki work? That's a very nice question, but the answer doesn't have to do with the Spooky2, I'm afraid. How do you become a Reiki master? Is look it up. You get trained for it, you follow a course, and then you get an attunement. Then you become Reiki master. And how does Reiki work? Yeah, that's a longer answer. I can't get into that today, I'm afraid. Question from Rodolfo Zurita. How many times are we supposed to run each right frequency program that we're interested in to go over a specific treatment or protocol? That's a common question, and the answer is it's variable from one person to another. The way it's recommended is that you run, in case of scalar, you do 1 to 2 sessions a day, 1 hour, maybe 2 hours even, if you can lie for that long. And people recommend that it's at the same time run with another modality, either with a remote or another Spooky2 modality. And this goes for days, 2 weeks, depending on the issue. If it's a chronic issue, it will probably take longer to correct than an acute issue. So the answer is it depends. Usually it takes some time before you notice improvements. Question from Barbara Farinelli: is there a criteria where it would be better to use the Rife generator with Scalar, or keep Rife separate and use it in remote mode? No, there's no criteria. You can try all of them and see which one works best for you or someone that you're trying to help. You can use the remote. What I can say is that you can use it in remote mode and it worked. But I also used Reiki. So if you're not using Reiki, I'm not sure. But I wanted to be sure that I connect the two. If you use DNA of a person, I think it works the same way as the remote. If you only use a picture, I think it depends. Question from an anonymous attendee: what about cardiac circulatory stents usage with Scalar? Generally, Scalar can be used with stents or implants, and that's because scalar energy goes through everything. It's not stopped by anything, and it's not electromagnetism, and so it doesn't generate any strange effects. Question from Katrina Pomart: I want to put my dog in a metal kennel, and the box is on each side of the kennel, keeping her in the center. I've read the scalar info that the Gen Pro needs to be at least 3 meters away from the boxes and never in the center due to the metal contact of the Gen Pro. Yes, that's correct. That being said, as well as the mentioned warning not to use metal or plastic on the transmitter, yeah, it probably is not useful to keep her in a cage, nor use a bed with metal in it when treating myself. Well, I mean, that's not such a problem actually, because I'm saying that you shouldn't use metal or plastic on the receiver coil if you want to get incorporated in the field, because then you will get the energy of metal and plastic in yourself or whoever is in between the boxes, which you don't want to have. But you can put a metal thing in between the boxes, as long as you don't press the link cable too much. That should be also isolated, the link cable, so that shouldn't be that much of a problem. But you might want to try and keep the link cable kind of not touching the metal part so much. Other than that, you can try to use a metal cage. A metal cage is not that nice, is it? Can you use a plastic one? That would be less traumatic, I think, at least for the dog. Just a suggestion. Question from Norman Austin: is the scalar effect reduced if one puts a lot of different frequencies into the software? I'm not sure what you mean by reduced. As I explained earlier, if you use the molecular or pure scalar, you get more field for your time than if you apply frequencies to. However, if you use frequencies, then you have the effect of frequencies, the Rife effect. And so I would say, depending on what you're working on, try them both. I think they both help. Question from Juan Carlos Cruz: can we do hunt and kill with a scalar? I think there's a protocol that's developed for that, but I'm not 100% sure. I know there's one developed for the plasma, and yeah, can't see why that won't be for the scalar. Right. Question from Monica. Go 2 questions. One for hunt and kill. Okay, we do 6 hours. Do we stay inside scalar fields the whole 6 hours? I mean, if you run the scalar, then yes, you would have to be inside the scalar field. 2 for BFB scalar scan. How do we run the results? Can we use remote to do killing with a scalar BFB result? You can use the remote, and you can use the scalar with the result. And you can also use the scalar in remote mode, as I explained earlier. So you have all these options available. Question from Rhonda Richardson. I'm concerned about metals in the field. I know not to use my cell phone, but what about the metal in my furniture, the spoon I eat my cereal with, things like that? Yeah, I wouldn't worry about those. So that's okay. If I understand correctly, you have it running through the whole house. So if you do, then don't worry about it. And if you have any devices that produce electromagnetism, as you may know already, tune the scalar field with everything inside and running, because that's when you will get the good tuning frequency. Question from Rodolfo Zurita. Is it possible to save a list of presets, programs to a custom list, load it on GX and run it whenever I want? Yes, you can. Have a look at the software webinars, and it should be covered there. Question from anonymous attendee. When using molecular receiver, does it matter when essential oil bottles have a plastic rim and cap label stickers? I prefer not to have plastic caps. So I take the cap off from the essential oil bottle, and I put a small crystal ball instead of it, because that's natural, and it also keeps the oil from evaporating. Question from Valburga Schmidt. Hi Valburga, nice to see you. I set up the boxes according to your recommendation, but I can't stand it. Then I put the boxes on the left and right side of my bed. They're about 4 meters apart. I guess what way there is not my whole body in the scalar field. Does it make sense to move the boxes once and a while, or just put them in the eye of the areas I'd like to treat? Yes, you can try. Interesting. You can't stand it, it means it's too strong for you. Because I also tried sleeping in the scalar field and I couldn't. The energy was too much for me to fall asleep. Yes, try it in any way that you feel comfortable. It's a trial and error thing, so people might find different things work for them. That's absolutely fine with me, and I do expect that to happen. Question from Rhonda Richardson. What about other people or animals in the field at the same time? Can an ill person or animal cause a problem? I don't believe that. There's been this discussion. I think the scalar has its effect on whoever or whatever is in the field. I don't think it carries things from one person to another. I don't think there's such a thing as the energy of disease that will be carried from one person to another. If there's a beneficial effect of the scalar, it goes through everything, and everything in the field will benefit the same. Samahar, thank you for another great webinar, and thank you for attending it. Question from Hans-Erik Larsen. When I use the scalar digitizer to do a bioscan, I can't get the test lamp button on the receiver to work. Is there something wrong? That's a common question. No, there's nothing wrong. But because you use the scalar digitizer, that takes off some of the energy in the system, some power, electricity, if you like. And so the scalar field is not as strong. And that's why you will not see the button lighting up if you press the test button. So don't worry, that's normal. Just do your scan as you would do usually. Question from Michael Goss. Can you use grounding sheets while using the scalar? I don't see why not. I haven't tried it myself. But try it on. I don't expect any issues, because the grounding sheet shouldn't be electrically connected to the link cable. And I don't see any other problem except that. Question from Rodolfo Zurita about running right frequencies on remote mode adding nails on the transmitter. How many times and for how long we need to run it for this successful about the final result? The same answer as for everything. It varies. It's not the same for two different persons. It's not the same for two different issues, even for the same issue for different persons. It's an individual thing, so it varies. Question from Brad Pierce. Do you think it possible to develop a wireless banana connection to make positioning so much easier for transmitter and receiver connection? They have this for optical, HDMI, RC cable, etc. So it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. I think it's possible. I think that the Spooky2 team is working on that. I've filled in a poll, some questions that they asked, and one of the questions was if we would like for them to implement a wireless connection between the transmitter and receiver. I said definitely yes, that would help a lot of people, including myself. So I think they're working on it. Question from Melinda Conley. What are your recommendations for having a person with cancer in the scalar field along with a person who does not have cancer? There's no special recommendation. They can both be helped. If you're afraid of something, then you shouldn't do it. If you fear that something will go terribly wrong, if these two people sit or lie by each other, then don't do it. I don't think there's a problem coming from a scalar, but if there's a problem in people's minds, then they shouldn't do it. Right. Question from Bob Severino. Many practitioners do biofeedback scans from 500 Hertz up to 1 megahertz. However, there are many entries in the RIVE database that are lower than 500 Hertz. Can lower limits than 500 Hertz be used for the whole body by BFB scan? I don't see why not. But mind what you're finding. Again, be very mindful of the biofeedback scan. Biofeedback scan, as I said, was first developed to find and kill microorganisms. And that's the logic behind it. You get 20 or 30 or 10 frequencies in that range, but you don't know what they are, and you don't know what they're doing. You don't know if they're killing something or not. And if so, what they're killing. Yeah. So be wary with that. Question from Rhonda Hicks. I am unclear on the scalar harmony used with audio devices. Do you just plug the cord into a speaker? No, the harmony is plugged as a speaker. You use it as a speaker. You plug it in your smartphone or some other device. It's an output device. Yeah, and of course you do need an app if you plug it in your phone. Okay, a question from G. Norton. If I understand correctly, the biofeedback is only to detect pathogens. Yes, that's the logic of it. But does it also detect toxins like lead and mercury? No, it cannot be used for that or like that. What you can do though is something that I haven't covered, which is called grade scan. And there's a tutorial for that to do with the scalar as well. I do this more often than the biofeedback scan. The grade scan or grade program scan is when you want to refine your frequencies based on a condition. If you want to look for something for headache, you ask the person to lie down and you make a grade scan using the keyword headache when you get to the software part. And if you run through the tutorial, then you'll understand what I mean. I think that's a much better use than the biofeedback scan. Question from Alicia Sedeno. How many times per week would you suggest this being used to treat a person? As I said, you can use it every day, even twice a day, 1 hour to 2 hours a session. Question from anonymous attendee. How is remote executed? If you mean remote mode in Scalar, I explained this in my presentation. If you mean the Spooky2 remote, that's a different device and modality altogether. And there are other webinars that address that. Question from Rodolfo Zurita: what would be the best small crystal to use and that I could have it hanging in my neck? I'm not sure what you mean. If you mean with a scalar, no, because you want to imprint it. If you imprint it, you put it on the transmitter, and you can imprint it with the pure scalar or with the frequencies of your choice. If you want to incorporate it in the scalar field, you place it on the receiver coil. Question from G. Norton: what is the best crystal? I mean, if you want to talk about crystals, there's a different topic. It also depends on the person and issue you want to work with. There's no, I mean, the clear quartz crystal is a good all-around crystal, but there are many others that you can use. Sorry, next question, G. Norton: where do you put the photons to send frequencies? On the transmitter coil, the same as the DNA. Question from anonymous attendee: should link cable be kept 3 feet away from body since it runs EMF? No, that's not necessary. That runs in between the two boxes. It's not great interference, and it's accounted for in the setup. Question from Nora Ham: which is the difference between this and Russia? I don't know what Russia is. I'm sorry. Question from Stephen Clow: do you have local reps to assist with setting up? This is so complicated that it would be nicer to find someone with a machine who can instruct me. I agree. Unfortunately, well, yeah, you asked me if I have local reps. I don't work for Spooky2. I'm not directly part of the Spooky2 team. I only help with the webinars. I'm a user that's gone through some processes. And so there are trainers or certified trainers who can help with setting up, and they offer their services for a fee, and myself included. I'm one of them. I can also do remote sessions for questions. But if you mean hands-on setting up, then you would need to find someone in the area, and for that we have the Spooky2 groups on Facebook. You can ask there. Question from Raid M: is there a way to amplify or attenuate the scalar field once in resonance? How would you measure the intensity? No, not that I know of, at least. Question from Helma Meze: when you have crystals on the receivers, are they simply transmitting their frequencies, or are you imprinting frequencies on them to use them somewhere else? You can do both, but if you have crystals on the receiver coil, there is only one receiver. You use the plural. There's one receiver and one transmitter. If you put a crystal on the receiver, the energy of the crystal will be incorporated in the field, and the person will receive the energy through the field. Okay, so that's how it works. They're, if you like, transmitting their frequencies. I would say the energy is transmitted through the scalar field. And you can also imprint them, but that's a different process. Okay, question from Adelaide: true body, which crystal promotes deep sleep? Oh, that's a crystal question. I mean, you can try amethyst, that's the easiest to find. There are many others, but that's for a different topic. Scalar helps with sleep, by the way. And other Spooky2 devices with appropriate frequencies. Question from Glennis Peterman, a very basic question. The transmitter is the box with the dials. Yes, it is. And the receiver is the box with the button to check the connection. Yes. The crystals will be placed on the transmitter. If you want to imprint them with frequencies, you place them on the transmitter. If you want to get the effect of the crystals on your body, then you place them on the receiver coil. Question from Doris Yane: can you use the scalar if you have atrial fibrillation? Yes, you can. Question from Muriel Fierstein: say you run right healing frequency on scalar while you sleep in it. A program says 7 hours. Is that okay? I don't see why not. However, if you haven't done this before, you shouldn't start with 7 hours in a row. it may be too much for the body to accept and integrate at once. So I would recommend, if you're new to the scalar, start with 1 hour and see how you feel, or the person you want to help, start with 1 hour. If it goes fine, then you can increase to 2 hours, 3 hours, and so on and so forth. I know people who sleep in the scalar field for 8 hours, sometimes longer, and they enjoy benefits. So yeah, you can keep it for a long time, but I would suggest not at once, not in the first try. Question from Ricardo Galinato: if scalar is an energy wave, how does it differ from an electromagnetic wave? I've explained this in the beginning. So scalar also travels like a frequency right now. It's a different way. It propagates in a different way, and it's a different type of energy than the electromagnetic energy. Question from Katrina Pomart: if I do a biofeedback on my dog with her in the metal or plastic kennel, will the metal or plastic interfere with the biofeedback? That's a tough question. The plastic maybe not, the metal might. Question from Marilyn Devonish: the configuration of my bedroom means I have to have them set up at the head of my bed, a few inches from the wall. I've always wondered if how my scalar field is going through my neighborhood's bathroom, which backs onto my bedroom. Yeah, it definitely does. As I said, it goes through everything. If it goes through a Faraday cage, it goes through everything. Concrete is nothing. So yes, it does go. So then your neighbors might benefit from that as well. Question from Michelle Wilson: if laying head to toe between boxes, doesn't matter which one is at the head, transmitter or receiver? It matters for me, at least. I could feel the difference. I tried it the other way around and it felt wrong. I do believe that the human body, just like the scalar, has a polarity and a spin, and you need to match the scalar with the human electromagnetic field. So that's why I keep it like that. But maybe for other people, they don't mind, so try it out. Question from Dorisian: does Dr. Stanisor do private consultation? Yes, I do. You can look me up on the Spooky2 Academy website, or you can find me on Facebook or through Facebook. Question from Katrina Pomart: the stickers and crystals go on transmitter or receiver? The same question repeated. It depends what you do with them, what you want to do. Okay, they say for imprinting. If you want to imprint, then it goes on the transmitter coil. Question from Cynthia McLennan: hi Cynthia, nice to see you here. How long does the scalar energy last in the crystal if you wear it around your neck after imprinting it with a scalar energy? I've had this question before. Well, the crystals might hold the energy even longer because they're resonant by nature. So it would keep for at least a couple of weeks, maybe even longer. But I mean, again, my own experience, I tried imprinting frequencies to the crystals and I didn't like it. And that's because I'm familiar with crystals without the Spooky2 and frequencies, and it felt artificial. It's like I was forcing the crystal to do something. I prefer to work with the crystals just with my own energy and their energy, but it's a question of taste. Try it out and see how it works. Right, okay, now we're done with the question and answer list. Let me quickly go through the webinar chat window, which is quite long, and see if there's something that I haven't answered on the other one. Okay, well, let's see. Hi Miruna, it's nice to see you. Okay, people were already explaining how the scalar is generated. That's nice. Okay. Okay, question. They're saying, yeah, that's confusing. Is this Spooky2? Yeah, this scalar is Spooky2, obviously. But it can be used as a hands-off machine. The pure and molecular scalar, you only need to switch it on and then tune it, and then you can use it without any frequencies, without the software. You don't have to complicate your life if you find these things difficult. You can enjoy the pure scalar or anything that's placed on the receiver. All right. Okay, so people were saying that it would be nice to show the unit. I've shown the units, both boxes. To show how to tune it, you have a tutorial for that. As I said, just look it up. Look it up on the YouTube. Search Spooky2 Scalar tuning, and you'll find it. There's even more than one actually. Okay. Yeah, you need to do a self-study for the Spooky2 devices. And some people might find it difficult. If you feel you're stuck, you can ask for help in the Facebook groups, or you can look for trainers and they'll be happy to help. Someone says that the interface of the software looks old-fashioned. I agree. But it is quite effective and it's not difficult at all. It looks maybe a bit intimidating if you're not used to work as such with things directly, but you pick up things quickly if you want. I know people that are not tech savvy and they still learn how to use a lot of devices. So it's more about perseverance than technical abilities. Someone asked Gabriel Otto Santo, I think, is it possible to clean water? I'm not sure what you understand by clean. If you mean instead of using a filter, it cannot do the job of a filter. But you can definitely imprint with energy, with a scalar, or with frequencies. Someone mentioned colloidal silver. That's a different topic, but I'm very passionate about that. I like that a lot. This webinar is recorded, and the recording will be uploaded to the Spooky2 Academy website in a few days. It will be available for everyone to see. Okay, someone, Steve Kemp asked, can a scalar system be set up on each side of the bed and husband and wife get treated at the same time while sleeping? Yes, it can. Yeah, you do need to have space in between the boxes. 1.8 meters, as I said, should be the minimum. Greg Moser, what is the range of the scalar waves with the receiver and transmitter separated by 6 feet? I've shown the geometry of the field. So they go in between. If they're 6 feet, let's say you have 2 meters in between the boxes, then the shape is like a rugby ball in between the boxes, and the width is half of the length, let's say, the distance between the boxes. So that's 1 meter width and going in between in this. football shape or rugby ball shape. Okay, question. Can man kill viruses, bacteria, and parasites from the water? You can. I don't see why not. But then you need to know which one they are, because that means rifing. That's a bit of a different question. It's not meant to do that. Let's say that. You can use some substances for that. You can use colloidal silver, for instance, which is quite effective at killing pathogenic bacteria. Okay, Zeppelin, that's the word I was using for it. That's the geometry of the scalar field. Okay, question from Lorraine McGowan. What type of crystals do you use? Oh, I use a lot of crystals, lots of different crystals. I have many, many, many crystals. Oh yeah, the question is, what are the recommendations for having a person with cancer in the scalar field along with a person who does not have cancer? I don't have any special recommendations, as I said. They say that if you have frequencies, then the body absorbs what it needs and ignores the rest. If that's true, then two people can easily sit in the scalar field and you can run the cancer protocol for scalar for hours in a day without any issues. But try it out and see how that works for you. Because, for instance, as I said, I set up the scalar for my bed and I couldn't fall asleep. I was feeling well, very energetic, but I couldn't get myself to the point that I would fall asleep. So I had to stop it. I'm not trying to sleep in the scalar field anymore. Okay, someone asked about the scalar EMF field intensity, so that this is probably the tuning. We've talked about this and I showed the graph, if that's what you mean. Scalar is not EMF, as I said also again. Question from Laurie W. I have a large cobalt shoulder replacement. Cobalt? Interesting. Don't think I've heard that one before. Shaft about 10 centimeter long with a head about 5 centimeter wide. Will this impact my field? I don't think so, no. Can you use a scalar if you have atrial fibrillation? I think I've had this before. Yes, you can. Yeah, question from Greg Mauser. How do you run the waves throughout the house if the link cable is only 6 feet long? Do you need another link cable for the receiver to keep it energized? Yes, obviously. You need to cover the distance between the boxes, and there are very long cables available for people to buy. You can, find use another banana cable if you like. Okay, let's see if there's question from Richard Crawford. Is it capable of determining a frequency of a material, mineral, or crystal, or a biological sample? No, it cannot be used for that. Not to get a frequency as an output, measuring something, no. Okay. Let's see if there's something else. The alternative to biofeedback scan, if I can repeat it, that's the grade scan. It's not an alternative, it's a different thing actually, but I use it more often than the biofeedback scan. Question from Laurie W. What is the maximum length I can use between boxes with appropriate length link cable? That I don't know. I don't know how far people have gotten in between the boxes. It can be quite far, I think. Definitely including a whole house in it. How does working with Spooky2 Scalar and substance water items is different or similar when compared to working with radionics plates on? So it's a different energy. That's Mila E. It's not radionics. If you have radionics device, I also have a couple sold by Barcana Radionics, and I power them with the Spooky2 software and frequencies and generator. But it's not that. And so it's, how does it compare to it? It doesn't. It's not similar. It's different. It works in a different way. Exactly how, I don't know. I don't know if anyone can answer this question, but radionics is a different thing altogether. Someone asked transplant problems. I don't know exactly what you mean. If you can address transplant problems with a scalar, yes, you can. Question from Lan Petri: does using a substance on the receiver vary with the quantity of the substance? Does using substance diminish its energy over time? Does it vary with the quantity? I don't think so, because this is a qualitative thing rather than a quantitative thing. And so the energy of that material will be incorporated in the scalar field. It's not that if you put a bigger bottle of essential oil, you'll have more effect. I don't think so. Does using substance diminish its energy over time? Not per se. Although if you keep the bottle open, the essential oil will evaporate and then will kind of disappear. So in that sense, yes. Right. I have some other questions. Question from Joseph Brozowski: can you use a 75 ohm coax cable with 3mm adapters? I'm not sure. I think the link cable is 50 ohm, but we would have to check that on the website. You need to use the same kind of cable. Question from Patricia McEnvoy: if you cannot put the scalar head to toe, could you place it diagonally from head? Yes, you can do any of these. I'm just saying that this is my personal preference. You can use it in any way that you like and see how you benefit from it. Question from Sharon Denom. Hi, Sharon. How long do you have a drug or supplement on the receiver? Also, all the substances degrade over time. It relates to the previous question. You can leave the drug or supplement on the receiver as long as you want it to be used with the scalar. Can be as long as you want. I leave my crystals on the receiver all the time. So the substances degrade over time? Not as such, no. Can you reuse the supplement? Unless they get used up, they don't degrade, not by using them with a scalar field. But yes, you can use them as many times as you want. Question from Lan Petri: Does using a substance on the receiver vary with the quantity of the substance? No, it doesn't. No. Okay, the same question as from the other chat. Question from Joseph Brzezowski. Can you use the Mermaid Magic Pro with the scalar field if you are not able to use it simultaneously? Can it reside within the field while you are using the scalar system? I wouldn't use it while you have the scalar, because the Magic Pro is a PMF coil, and it produces PMF, which is electromagnetic pulses. So I won't use it at the same time. But if the scalar is switched off, yes, you can use the Mermaid Magic Pro. Just don't use them both at the same time. Question from Juan Carlos Cruz. Can I combine Spooky2 Scalar machines like 4 or 6 boxes to increase the scalar? That's interesting. I don't think I've had this question before. I wouldn't try to use more than one scalar in the same space at the same time because of the way that it's generated. It emits this wave fronts, and if you have more than those, they might interfere with each other and not get this scalar effect that is meant to be. Question from Rhonda Richardson. What would happen if you had 2 sets of scalar devices set up? Okay, this is the same thing. In a north, south, east, west, maybe in a 90-degree angle, it would work. You might want to try it and tune it, and then check it with the button, with the field button, and see how strong that is. And it might be lower, or it might be the same strength, field strength. Question from Andreas Fiedler. Can I use DH frequencies with a remote on the body parallel with scalar? I wouldn't use that because the remote is a mini scalar. It generates a scalar field, but much smaller than the big scalar. And so if you have it inside the scalar field, the big field might disrupt the small field. So I won't use it at the same time now. All right, those were all the questions. And thank you so much for attending and staying with me until the end. And I wish you a very good day forward. And I wish that the scalar benefits you. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you again.